I had my so huge success. I had that moment where I was seen and heard, right? We all want to be seen and heard at some point in our life, right? And I remember my principal comes up, you know, that stern guy. He's kind of another football player kind of guy. He was just huge. I was actually a little scared of him for many, many years. Comes onto the stage and he looks at me and he goes like this, meaning just stay on stage. And I was like, okay, what's he gonna do? And he looks out at the audience and he's like, I want everybody to stand up and give a round of applause to Mrs. Nakama Warner, which was my mother, for surviving and being able to come and join us today. And everybody stood up, and everybody gave her applause, and it was beautiful, true or true. She deserved it, yes? She survived something amazing. But for a 9-year-old girl who just had a solo and had the 30 seconds to 1 minute to kind of shine, in my head, I felt invisible. And I felt like I completely didn't count.
So what I saw completely changed my life. On this side of the courtroom was this row of men, and they had these huge shackles on them, like on their wrists and on their ankles. I mean, I was expecting handcuffs, but I don't know if you guys, I'm a theater person, so I don't know if you know Les Mis, or if you think of like the Revolutionary War, you know, the French Revolution, when all of the criminals had these huge shackles on them. And they all had these shackles on them. And now most of the men were like what you would consider, you know, typical criminals. Like Hollywood would cast all of them as criminals, right? Scary looking men, you know, bunch of tattoos, kind of big, rough looking. And then there was my father. My father is 6 feet tall, you know, very lanky kind of guy. He was visibly shaking. And I remember his head was down and he's trying to pray. And that was the beginning of this huge shift and this huge understanding that everything that happens to us, all the results that we have in our life, are based on some actions that we took, or maybe some inactions that we took, that came from certain feelings that we had, that originally came from thoughts, or what I call sponsoring thought. So everything that you are experiencing in your life at this very moment comes from these thoughts that you have that cause feelings that create certain actions, sometimes inactions, that produce result. True or true? You have a friend come over and she's sharing all of her problems with you, and it's so clear what the solution is. It's like, yeah, why don't you just do this? And you're giving her advice, you're being compassionate to her, and you're helping her through it. And she's like, thank you so, so much. And then she goes to the next person, and the next person, and says kind of the same thing and maybe hears it a little bit differently. And then she goes back to you and she goes, Vicki, you'll never believe what Mary told me. And you're like, oh my God, I told you that like 3 weeks ago. I don't know, have you ever had that experience happen to you? Yeah. And then, what about the other way? Have you ever been on the other side where you're telling one person your problems, and then you tell the next person, and you hear the advice, and it somehow seems kind of familiar, but maybe not quite the same, right? You hear it again and again and again and again, and then like number 10, you're like, oh my God, I never thought of it that way, and you're just somehow, it clicks, and then you somehow take the advice. Have you ever experienced anything like that before? Yeah? And so what I've learned was we all have that experience, both ends. And there's a few different reasons why that happens.
Emotions aren't bad. What's bad is if we push it aside and we don't let ourselves feel because we think it's bad to feel, or we're scared of being judged by feeling. And so allow the emotions come up. You know, we're going to be doing this, I'm going to put you through a hypnotherapy session. Is that cool? You guys excited? Okay. Some emotions might come up for some of you. Just allow it to come up. It's okay. Emotions aren't bad. Emotions aren't part of us. It just goes through us. Make sense? Yeah. Okay, let's have like 2 more. If I can invite you to just stay open. Now, of course, we're going to continue to have ideas. You know, I'm recently new to California, and I'm doing this all over the country. I'm going to New York on Sunday, back home for a week, and going to be visiting about 7 shelters. And then after that, San Francisco, Chicago, Denver, where else am I going? Florida, Illinois, and I'm just doing this thing. Now, I had certain ideas about California when I came, and I was just like, wow, totally different. It's awesome. And so it's okay, we're human beings, we're gonna have ideas, but just stay open. Make sense? Awesome. Okay, everyone take a deep breath in. And let it out. One more, take a deep breath in.